Design isn't just what it looks like, it's how it feels, how it connects, and how it brings joy to our lives. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to WiREnet World Annual Event 2024. My name is Abha Pawan Gopal, a proud WiREnet member for the past 3 years and growing, and honored to be your MC for today. While I'm eager to start the much-awaited annual event, there are some housekeeping rules I just want to bring to your attention. Firstly, please kindly keep your phones on silent. We don't mind you taking pictures and tagging us on social media. Our hashtag is WiREnet, #WiREnet, so please do that. The second thing is kindly watch out. The washrooms for women is on the right and the men is on the left. Kindly watch us for the exit symbols. And I hope you all have your orange band on. So please keep it on. One free drink on the house with the orange band for all of you. Okay? So we have a packed schedule today, so we'll do our best to keep on moving with time. And post the event, we're going to have dinner at the terrace, along with some music and some drinks for all of you all. Now, tonight, we are thrilled to bring to you an unforgettable gathering around the theme, Design for Happy, the art of creating joyful spaces. This isn't just another event. It's a celebration of design that goes around aesthetics to touch lives, spark happiness, and bring people together in truly meaningful ways. Why design for happy? Because in a world moving at the speed of light, our spaces are what grounds us, inspires us, and yes, fills us with joy. When we design with happiness in mind, we're not just shaping buildings and rooms, we're crafting experiences that uplift, energize, and connect us to each other. And let's be real, without joy, coffee wouldn't be enough to keep us going. Our lineup for tonight is truly spectacular. We'll kick things off with an inspiring fireside chat, a powerful panel discussion, our journey as WiREnet, and a keynote speech. Together, we'll explore how every element, from urban design to corporate spaces, can be infused with joy, purpose, and soul. We would like to extend our gratitude to our wonderful sponsors, our annual prime sponsor, Human Scale, and our annual event sponsors, Detail, Adrian's, How We Work, and Merino, without whom this event would not have been possible. So get ready to be inspired, to connect, maybe just dance a little, and leave tonight with a heart filled with mind buzzing with possibilities. Let's design, let's dream, and let's celebrate and create happiness. Once again, welcome to an unforgettable night at WiREnet World 2024. I now invite our fireside speakers to come on stage for the next piece. In a world focused on sustainability and well-being, today's fireside chat on topic, the power of joyful, sustainable art and design, will explore how art and architecture can play pivotal roles in designing spaces that inspire happiness and harmony. This session will bring together an art curator with a passion for joyful and sustainably sourced art and an architect who transforms spaces by integrating these values. Let me introduce the firebrand speakers for this session. Chandra Jain. Chandra is the Honorary President of Kadambari, a non-profit organization promoting Indian arts and crafts. She is an executive committee member for the Crafts Council of Karnataka and the founder of Kim Cab. Chandra's designs are deeply inspired by natural world, reflecting her belief that creativity thrives when we connect with nature. And with her is joining us Dr. Christine Buckner, an architect. She is an architect actively implementing best practices, sustainability, and wellness in design. As a director at M. Moser Associates based out of Hong Kong, she brings her experience with urban integration, revitalization, integrative sustainability, and wellness design solution initiatives. Please join your hands together and welcome Chandra and Christine.
Are these on? I think they're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Abha, for that wonderful, inspiring beginning to this evening. And as somebody said, that where's the fire? So I replied that, I hope that Christine and I would be able to create enough fire here and all of you will join in. So here we go. Thank you. Thank you very much for asking me to be here. It really is my honor to be here, to be with people who actually create spaces. Because for me, as a person, where coming from the background that I come from, Vishwakarma, which is the one who creates, is aligned with anybody who creates. And as all of you would know, that we have a Vishwakarma Puja. Because every creator is connected with that creator who's created this world. So with that kind of power in your hands, in this global world, when people are creating, all of you, creating a space within the space, it is really an honor to be here and share some thoughts. So let's start. Christine, I would first just ask a very simple question and share with you that when we say design for happiness, for me, design is happiness. So, but probably we need to look at what is happiness. How do we decide what is happiness? The quest for happiness has been there always, from Buddha to a person who's coping with life, but everybody is looking for joy. So, what are your thoughts on how would you define happiness and then take it to design, really?
Thanks, Chandra. Actually, it's interesting when you ask that question. When I was a young girl, and my family comes from architects and planners, my parents said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to really like to design places that make people happy," like as a very small child. And my parents nodded, and then my mother said, "That's interesting. Do you know what makes people happy? Do you know what makes everybody happy?" And I thought, yes. And then I thought about it, and I thought, we're all different. We're all unique. And so we worked on it. We workshopped in a gentle way at a young age. And the definition I came up with was, as an architect, it's the privilege to create places within which people can meet and exceed their potential. So this is embedded happiness in purpose, meaning, and individuality, and culture, and so many different things. So happiness expanded into potential. But for me, yes, what I find, and I love that you started with the divine, because we all have such a strong divine connection. And when our soul is happy, when we are resonating with joy, with humans, with connection to nature, to purpose, to love, to people, we're just able to live our best lives. And if we want to measure that, we can measure our nervous systems, we can measure our blood pressure, we can measure our mental waves, look for the coherence, and make sure we're in our parasympathetic nervous system, within which we get into flow, and we find most people get into their most creative. And when you're happy in creating, you're also creating things that are making others happy. So it's a long answer.
Yeah, very true. And I think this brings us back to the same thing that, whenever we are creating, I think in a way, we are always drawing our inspiration from nature.
Yes.
Uh, it, because in nature, if we really look around, there is actually no disharmony. Whichever way a tree is, it still looks beautiful. Whichever way a pebble is lying around, and there is design. There's design in everything. The moment you look out, I mean, there may be a design in what I'm wearing, but there's design just all around. And without design, there is a design, a purpose in the very world that we exist in. So when the nature comes, and I think that's what we're trying to do all the time, because whether it's a workplace or it's a home, you go into that space, and you're spending your life, either your working life or your restful time, either in a home or in the office, workspace. If you don't get joy there, then it's like your life is going without really giving you what you're living for. Of course, it's a question of what is happiness, what is pleasure, what is what. And happiness is a deeper thing. You know, things can give you pleasure, but happiness comes from within. Yes. So when you look at these flowers that lying there, the inspiration keeps coming, and you'll be surprised to know that those are the parijata flowers, also known as coral jasmine. And when they are boiled, when we process, we are able to get this color.
It's gorgeous.
So, I mean, I'm making this point only to say that the closer we are to nature, we are at this point of time in the world where we are realizing that how much harm we have done. And with all of you, creating spaces, creating living spaces, working spaces, it's become so much more important to create things which are sustainable, which sustain life, which sustain this world, and which sustain the very existence of human beings.
Absolutely, Chandra. Sustaining humanity. And when you pause and enjoy that natural element and take time with children, with each other, to find natural patterns, there are laws, whether you call them divine laws or just the elements that are within nature. And if you take those flowers and go deeper and deeper and deeper, you continue to find the order of beauty. And as you step away from it, if we can work within those same ecomimesis, if we can work with that biophilic attention to detail, we can be mesmerized. And we can find so many patterns that are natural. And if we can also use those natural materials, then in a considerate and responsible way, then we're actually bringing that opportunity wherever we've done it. So bringing it into people's homes, into their offices. And we as humans have an automatic response to natural things, because for so much of our lives, we were outside. We were in survival and we were in harmony. In fact, I would say we were one with nature. We are nature. And now we spend 95% of our time indoors. And so much of the work we're doing is about how to bring nature inside.
Absolutely. So we are constantly actually trying to bring outside into our homes or workspaces to have this sense of connectivity and sense of fulfillment. Well, this, I'm so inspired by so many architects earlier and even now who are working so beautifully with this kind of concept. Of course, I really love the work of Jeffrey Bawa, because I felt that the way he connected with nature and his buildings sort of really opened out, and there was just no barriers in between. So, or even in India, when I see, or even the space which has been created by 100 Hands where we are sitting, there is an openness. There is like the elements in India. Of course, we talk about the five elements, but that's what the world is constituted of. So if you get light, you get air, you get that sense of all those things which make this world come into a building, come into a space, it really becomes a small little universe represented in there. So in that context, I'd like to ask you a question as an architect. How do you feel when the construction starts getting focused more from the point of view of just utility?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see where you're going. And I see that we have a new slide up, so I'll just respond to it and to your question. So these are some items that are in our current office that, and a couple of them, including many that aren't on here, we worked with some of the artisans that are in your colleague network. And it was so meaningful to all of our members and our colleagues to know that they had handmade special items that were local as a way of belonging. And that's a very gentle and straightforward way to add that in. But I think what's even more interesting is when you start to do it through the design. And so we start to say, how do you understand space? How does the space work with light? In fact, does the light form the space? Is that in fact not, or is it art? The way that the shadows play, the way the materials are layered, the description you just had of layering inside to outside. So I spent quite a lot of time in Japan studying that, but you can see it in all in indigenous architecture and sensitive spaces. The definition of inside, outside, of you, me, it's blurred. And it's very much more human and welcoming. And if we can continue to do that through the way that we detail full spaces, definitions, materials, this is how we can manage it. And everything has to meet its use. It has to be usable. But there are so many ways to do that, which are heart-started.
And that is where, the challenge for creativity is. Because if it was really like a stamp or like a cookie cutter kind of a thing, that you look at a space and you say, look, this is required, and you sort of come with that kind of set notion, then you're really not adding to this universe by complementing what already exists and also not sustaining and giving more energy to the lives that will cohabit that space.
Absolutely. And here you have a beautiful example.
Yeah, in fact, I'm very proud of being able to show this because, I've always believed that if you really look at, after all, architecture has always been there because there has been a need for human beings to have shelter. That was the first thing that probably happened, that they started from the cave to then this kind of, very low slung houses, and then it just kept on changing over time. So when you look at Iran, you look at Japan, you look at, you closer home in India, you look at Kerala or you look at Himachal Pradesh, totally different terrains. And they integrated the local materials and the climate and everything, and there was a sense of that connection remained. So I've been wondering how this is going to happen and talking about it. So this particular project, which has been done by Kanvinde and Roy Chaudhary, so they have done this Bhilai project. And Bhilai is in a state called Jharkhand, where the tribal communities, they work with, they do this art, the Gond tribe, as it's called. So they looked at that and they decided, because Bhilai is, all of us associate with a steel plant. So the IIT Bhilai that came up, they used the local artisans, their imagery, which is laden with symbolic meaning, brought in their own technicians to also work along with them so that they could work, and created these amazing huge screens by doing, and the dots that you see, those are actually perforations. Because if you see a Gond painting on paper, then it's like little dots there or little separation of color. They transferred that whole image onto that. And I really felt that that really was such a beautiful way of integrating the local culture, local communities, and local terrain. They even retained some of the elements that already existed because there was a little temple that was there under a tree that was retained as it was. It just added that little accent. So I think that, the sensitive architects are already doing that very beautifully. This is
And it's
just
serving you as well. It's serving
Yeah.
to give you shade and shadow and interest as you go through.
So it's not like you separate art from architecture. Architecture is actually a culmination of all the arts, as theater is culmination of all the performing arts in a way. So art has to be integrated in it. I do understand that with the new ways that are happening, when you have to bring the outside in, then you work in trying to add on art to the places, as you so beautifully do. So how do you do that with the local ethos?
Yeah, well, maybe, oh, this isn't the next slide. I think it was a different slide, but okay. There was an image of a space, but it's okay. We can use this if you want. The next one. The next one. Isn't there a visual? Oh, you have to look. Okay. So, well, we had a photograph to show you that is a room made in it's a two spaces. One was in a technical campus, and it shares lots of examples of how we were using technological. So maybe they'll look and find those images. This is one example where you can see, and we've done the same thing in many different ways, but this is a very traditional way to do ceramic work and to build up spaces. Oh, and now we're jumping. You're getting a wonderful preview and a dance. But in this space, which is a very small part of an entire campus, you can start to see, again, the inside-outside space. You can see aspects of local culture. You can see the most important thing, which is the green walls and the greenery and nature, the warm tones, natural fans for ventilation. That means that you can already feel that the wind is moving, that indoor-outdoor is happening, that energy is flowing, and that when you're in that space, you're going to find an ability to talk to your colleagues, get into your soul, think about what it is that you want to work on. So these are the kinds of spaces that you can get away from your desk, do certain types of work, and then go back. And it's really important because they're for connecting within, connecting to other, connecting to nature, and honestly to connecting to those elements of air and light and spirit. And this is a way of thinking and making sure that we make this available for all people in all types of spaces, at all scales, whether we're doing schools or hospitals, workplace or home. This is where we thrive. And you can measure that shared appreciation and joy by the impacts that we've experienced, the feedback we get, and there's measurable way to share, and that can be important. I know some of us were talking about, how do clients know that that has a value? How do you prove all of that values? The proof is almost not necessary when everybody experiences something so deeply together. And yet we can prove it. We can take the physical measurements of all the elements of our body, but we can also share in how people use the space. Is there a sense of joy? Do people laugh? And when I ask people, what do you feel when you walk into a space? What does a space have to have that will make you feel like you are welcome and you belong there? And I get lots of different answers. I'd love to ask every single one of you. I'm going to tell you what my mom answered, but first I'd like to ask Chandra. When you walk into a space, how do you know that you belong in that space, that it's good for you?
Well, there has to be a certain warmth. First of all, I think you
Hold your mic up.
yeah, certain warmth. It's really the warmth of a place which welcomes you even before you meet people. You know, you enter a space, and if it's just very clinical, very cold, very everything, there are just no textures. There's just nothing to stimulate your senses and your feelings. Then you feel that it's like it doesn't even register actually. That's what happens because you sometimes go to many spaces and you go and you come. But if you notice something somewhere, that means that you're connecting with it. Yeah?
Beautiful. And the answer, lots of different answers I've got, different ways to reduce anxiety, to enhance joy. My mother's answer was, if she sees people that look happy in the space, communicating, being comfortable, she knows she can find her way to be comfortable and talk with them. So just the subtleties of being close to the most simple ways of understanding how architecture creates places for people to live their best lives. This is our office actually here in Bangalore. We carefully chose this site to feel that you are surrounded by nature, so that we designed it where we placed the desks, how we designed all the elements, through a lot of research, lighting studies, acoustic studies, so that the windows can be open 95% of the time. There's 1 hour when you have direct, intolerable glare, we close it. But all of the rest of the time, you have this nature-imbued light within a very flexible environment. We invite you to join us, but it's a beautiful space. Yeah.
Would you say that when you work with the natural elements or things which are handmade, it brings a different kind of energy to the place, or it's the same when you work with things which are like mass-produced?
I think we know the answer to that one, Chandra. I think we all know that something made with love and by hand just has such a embedded joy, love, and meaning. And if we can bring that into our spaces, it will be great. Am I hearing that we need to finish up?
And so, but I also realize that when we work with things which are made with hand, you're not just sustaining and taking care of that space, but you're also connecting and sustaining a larger community, which is creating those beautiful objects.
Yes.
So I think, this way you're connecting so much more, especially in this day and age of machines and everything being so, what should I say? I don't want to use the word artificial, but, only looking at it from maybe it's easier to maintain. I think somewhere we take away the warmth that exists. It's important that things are such that take away the burden of maintenance, but I think it is possible to do all that and retain the beautiful touch and warmth of life in all the spaces that are created by all of you.
Thank you so much, Chandra, and I think we'll close there and just, again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that insightful chat on how art is an essential element of enhancing character, aesthetics, and human experience in the functional environment. I want you guys to wait. I'd like to invite Renuka Rajgopal and Leila Khalil to kind of felicitate our guests, please. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Chandra and Christine. Thank you. Thank you so much. Moving on, let me present to you our annual prime sponsor, Human Scale. Thank you for supporting us through this year. Human Scale is a leading designer and manufacturer of ergonomic products that improve health and comfort for life. And our annual event sponsor, Detail. Detail is one of India's foremost design-led interior fit-out brands for high-end hospitality and residential spaces. Let's have a look at their videos. We had some technical glitch. I think we'll start again.
Plastic than fish. And the numbers of animals at risk show us just how urgent this problem really is. At least 200,000 sea turtles, 300,000 whales and dolphins, and millions of seabirds are dying each year from the steady stream of plastic waste entering our oceans. One of the most harmful types of ocean plastic is also the one that gets little attention: discarded fishing nets. They can ghost fish for years, damaging delicate ecosystems and killing the marine animals that inhabit them. The ocean is vast, and this problem is big. And while no one can do everything, everyone can do something. At Human Scale, we're working with our suppliers to turn discarded fishing nets into task chairs. We're creating products that begin to reverse the damage already done. But we can only do so much. Our hope is that others will join us in creating products that have a positive impact on our planet. Every buying decision we make is either part of the problem or part of the solution. Only together can we reverse this trend and keep more fish than plastic in our oceans.
Every product in our industry, every time it's manufactured, every time it's shipped, has a negative impact on the planet. We are pioneering products that have a positive impact on the planet. I think it's our obligation to protect the creatures that live here. I think they have as much right to planet Earth as we do. We've led our industry in sustainability and protecting the environment with the idea of getting others to follow.
When a business makes a decision to purchase sustainably, their impacts are that much greater because they're operating at scale. It lets the industry know that this is what is expected, it sends a signal that this is important, and it gives incentive for manufacturers to change.
When you buy a bunch of path chairs, it's really at that point not Human Scale who's having the impact, but you, the customer.
Our oceans are heading to a future of having
Thank you. And now to a very exciting and fun-filled panel discussion on the topic crafting joy and happiness in built environment, how we can inspire, innovate, and integrate. This session will be moderated by Venkat Neelakantan, who is the Executive Vice President and Group Head for Corporate Real Estate Services at Capgemini. In his role, he manages a range of responsibilities that span real estate realization and strategy across the globe for Capgemini. On the panel, we have Shanti Sundar. She currently leads people management for Google Cloud for APAC in Japan. Prior to Google, she spent over 2 decades in this domain for various tech organizations. Our next panelist is Ritesh Sachdev. He is a dynamic and high-performing real estate professional with more than 2 decades of corporate real estate experience with both service providers and development companies. As a Senior Vice President on Head, Ritesh is responsible for the P&L of commercial realty business for Tata Realty. Our next panelist is Dr. Deepta Satish. She's a design researcher, educator, architect, and planner working in sensitive, contentious landscapes. She is the head for Srishti Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology, Mahe Bangalore campus, and Manipal Center for Design with Environment through Education, Planning and Advocacy. Our final panelist is architect Gayatri Shetty, who is the co-founder for Gayatri and Namit Architects, GNA in short. GNA has been recipient to close to 39 national international awards. They offer consulting in the fields of architectural conservation through GN Heritage Matters, and she is also involved in an upcoming publication about the traditional knowledge systems to protect the rich cultural heritage. Please put your hands together and welcome our wonderful guests.
We take this mic or something?
There's a mic for you.
That's one.
Venkat, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Are we audible? Yes. Excellent. I have a small cheat sheet for everybody. So it's important I share it so we are all in sync and we have a conversation which is consistent. And we don't go tangential. And lovely to see some of the people I know in the audience. So nice to meet you, Viba. Oh, yeah. There you go, Ritesh. Did I miss you in this? There you go. Yeah, I hope it's the same document. Anyway. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, WiREnet, for this wonderful opportunity. And it's a very interesting topic, crafting joy and happiness in the workspace. And it was a brilliant initial conversation, ma'am, to set the context of art. As my wife was saying, and she had put a post a couple of days on Instagram saying that nature's imperfection is so perfect, right? And that's where you started. So we were sort of having a conversation, that statement, and today's topic that we initiated this session. So, with that said, I think we all have a common issue today. In my capacity as heading the global real estate across for Capgemini, touch upon people from different cultures, language. You agree, Ritu? I'm sure Boeing has similar issues, right? We have people coming from diverse backgrounds, expectation, interests, thoughts on environment, protection, fairness. You touch upon a gamut of topics. And all of this is expected in a workplace when they come to work. Some like Starbucks, some like coffee day, some like filter coffee from home, some don't like anything at all. Some love the aroma of coffee when they enter the office. Some love to be greeted saying, here is your ID card, get in. how do we handle such expectations? I'm sure Viva from WeWork has similar issues because you got multiple tenants, right, Viva? You don't know how to cater to that. We have these wonderful people here, so I'm in a good space. Typically, I get questioned by the board for various things. Today, I have the opportunity to question the eminent panelists and understand from them what do we do and how do we address some of the expectation. So, questions have already been leaked, but we will try and make it more conversational as we get in. Before we go, mics are working?
Hello, am I audible? Is this? Yeah, mic's working.
So you're happy with the mic? Oh, that's stage one. Excellent. Let's move to stage two then. So we will start, I think we are the minorities on stage. So I'll start with you, Ritesh. From a developer's perspective, right, how do you leverage sustainable practices and try and create environment that sort of brings in the topic of our conversation, which is joy and happiness? Very tough question, isn't it?
Well, thank you, and a very good evening to everyone, and thank you to WiREnet. The first session, joy is a very broad-based, anything that can bring happiness to you, and perhaps to a certain extent, I'll take the liberty of saying as a developer, and by the way, for about 20 years of my corporate life, I used to be on the service provider side of things and putting development companies on the spot. And now that I work for a developer for the past 5 years, I can just so much more appreciate that. With the first session, there can be so many different definitions of joy. It can be peace, it can be calm, it can be a word wow. I'm conscious of what I say, and I'll leave a few data pointers there, Venkat, and then try and build upon those a little bit as we go along. I think the first bit, and again, this is not I won't use the word sales pitch, but I've realized the firm that I work for, Tata Realty, the firm that we represent, I think everyone who works for the Tata Group, and I'll say this for myself, has a innate, inbuilt sense of responsibility. And again, I'm conscious of what I say. I speak for myself. This applies only to me. I think the group overall, if you were to juggle between, I'd say, socialism and capitalism over the last 150 years when the group was founded, I think there was a humane aspect of capitalism which was embraced by the group. Within Realty, what we're trying to do now is, interestingly, we're calling it responsible real estate. Again, COVID, once in a century event, and every time that we have these conversations, we say, well, COVID's 4 years back, and we keep on referring to that now because the return back to the offices and the lines that have blurred between, I'd say, homes and what COVID did for real estate, of the horrible things that COVID did to humanity, but there were some very, very good things that COVID did. It brought demand for real estate back in a generation which, frankly, was not willing to buy and was spending time and money on experiences. Everyone wanted to buy a home. Everyone wanted a larger home. When you're looking at returning back to the offices, I think the flight to quality, the appreciation of flight to quality, the appreciation finally of end-use occupiers and development companies and whoever it were, to be able to appreciate the impact that their choices make, or the fact that we're now finally wanting to pay a premium. I won't use the word premium. I'll tell you another something that we were doing yesterday where, but the appreciation of world-class sustainable developments finally came to the fore. I mean, if I'll use that word. um, employers wanted to bring the social connect, the joy, and everything that you'd experience in your home, in your own space. How can you bring that back, and how can you, we were speaking earlier today in the panel, how can you bring those elements back within offices, which I thought became an extension of your personal space, your home. There is a lot of data to be able to prove what perhaps we couldn't do over the last 100 years, perhaps a COVID did. There is data out there to be able to prove that sustainability can also finally end up being financially prudent, apart from a lot of other things. So we were speaking earlier today about form and function and a whole host of those, and a lot of these data pointers, of course, I think now from a development perspective, occupiers, end users appreciate that having full glass facade buildings in India, you finally got a choice and you wouldn't want to choose those. Having developments which have solar passive architecture and developments which don't have full glass facades, in its way will be able to contribute to a more sustainable, holistic environment. We, for example, and this is about 12 odd years back, chose to build for the future, Venkat, and I'll tell you a little bit about why I say that. Ramanujan and Teleon Park, and I'll take a step back. We spoke about passion, we spoke about joy. I think it needs to be starting from ideation. You've got to be passionate about what you build. I think I am fortunate to be working for a firm which puts a lot of importance on taking pioneering positions in sectors of national importance, and in taking pioneering positions in everything that we do. We build for the future. I'm delighted to share that a development that was conceptualized, built 12 years back today is the only IFC World Bank net carbon zero development in the country, and perhaps the 9th globally. The proof of the pudding, as I always say, is what happens out there. This particular development has been a magnet for occupiers, irrespective who, we've had examples, Venkat, where relocation or growth, when there is polling that happens within people internally who work there, they chose to be within Ramanujan and Teleon Park. That's the bond that I'd say sustainable places that offer that joy are able to bring to the larger community overall.
So let me hold you there. Just hold on. As a developer, you say you have the place where employees can come, relate to it, because that was there should be some warmth in the place. Right? That's the word you used, right? People are able to relate to it. So I will transfer this directly to you, right? From, as they put in that image, MS Mosa, to the leading search engine of the world, right? So we will ask the search engine of the world, how does such place help you and what do you do? Apart from the brilliant cafeteria that you run across the globe. Anybody disagrees Google having a brilliant cafeteria? Everybody agrees, right? Their food is always better than anywhere else you go. So, keeping that aside, what do you think? How do you build on what...
I thought you were going to allow me to speak about the brilliant food that we have. But everything Dr. Kristen said and Chandra Jain said and Ritesh said resonates so much. If I look at us, I'm in HR, as you know, in Google. I've traveled to multiple cities, multiple Google offices. And one of the themes that we have, and so therefore I can call myself as a user. Or I can say myself, the employees that I support as users of the space. And one of the things that I like about the space that we have is every Google office that we walk, we can connect to it. So let me give you an example of the office that we currently are. I'm based in Bangalore. And each of the floors that we have different connections to the city that we are. And I remember, and it was a new place we walked into, and we were so thrilled to see what are the new elements that come in, because our real estate team is fantastic. Every time we walk in, they give us some surprise. There will be some hidden space that you'll see joy in people's face. And I walked into, I'm a big Malgudi Day fan, and I walk into the 3rd floor of the building. There are some 8 floors, and I see the characters come alive. For me, as a user, that was joy. And I took my team there and said, not everybody relates to it, not everybody has seen that. And then when they see that and they say, what is it that, as a person brings the child in you when you're walking into a space, because you're spending most of your waking hours in office. And it is so important for us to keep that in mind. The second thing that I would say is, I remember walking into a Mountain View office. I was talking to Dr. Kristen, whether she's been there. There's a beautiful campus called the Bayview campus in Mountain View. And if you've read about it or you would have Googled about it, many of you must be knowing it. The fully sustainable office space. Apart from that, as a user, when I went, it has got like probably a 1 lakh square foot, just the lobby. And the design element over there is so diverse. You have something from Mexico, you have something from South Africa, you have something from India. And the whole idea is that we believe that we are a company that's for everybody. So when we walked in and we have parents coming in, and we have parents and children, and they can bring family anytime. There is, visits that we arrange, our real estate team arranges. And you can see the joy when they walk in, they can connect to their city. And that, to me, is fantastic. So when, as an HR professional or a manager that I'm dealing with my employees, I can actually pull them out of a difficult situation, go sit in this exciting place, have a lovely coffee, a cappuccino, a latte, a beautiful muffin, a fantastic snack. And because you said I shouldn't talk about snacks, I will still talk about it. Did you know we have 7,500 unique snacks in Google? In our 1,600 cafes that we have around 75 countries. Now that's the diversity that we are talking about. So spaces and food is an extension of that, is actually what connects you to the place. And I resonate so much when you talk about warmth, when you remember, when you walk into our home, you remember something. That's what brings joy. So workplaces, as HR professional, as a user, I believe plays such a significant part.
Absolutely.
In people's lives.
So diversity in space, diversity in snacks, diversity in everything. Now, I will have a follow-up question to that, which is not there in this, is, when we will come to you, is when you give, we are in the service business, one way or the other, product business, right? We are in the people environment. How does such space help us in supporting the employee to be more productive? And I'm using it in the right way, not the saying that, okay, you are supposed to do 100 panels, you did 120. That's not my intent, right? When you work better, when you work happier, your output is better. That's a natural environment. But we just hold on to that, Santi. Going to you, from a developer to a user, expectation of space, design, keeping snacks aside. As an architect, Gayatri, unless you have a point of view on how the muffin should look in an office, let us know. What do you think of?
It's got to match the interior.
Absolutely. So why don't you take on from here, Gayatri? Why don't you take it out from here to say, okay, what does it mean? What do you study? I mean, we are all very brilliant people in giving requirements, right? We sit across it. We want 7,500 types of snacks in our offices, all fitted out in that wall. Just on a lighter side. But what do you see as an essence? And how do you think you translate that into a tangible asset that we can see, feel, and enjoy as well?
Hi, everybody. I think it's, Deepta will agree, it's great fun to be architects and being in the creative field as such, because when we meet people, when we meet clients, when we meet somebody who wants, a space designed for them, especially in, homes and where people are a lot more sentimental and a lot more passionate about these spaces, we just ask them to dream. So we say, dream, give us your list. We may not tick off every box, but we would like you to do that. And we've seen the craziest of dreams, but it's a great starting point because people want, people love to dream. People want something that, they know that there are things which are not possible. But nevertheless, I think there are areas where, as architects, we tend to look at things being a lot more flexible. You try to kind of fit things in. And post-COVID, of course, there's been so much that one has had to do to kind of make things different for different people. Whether it's the study or whether it's the kitchen, whether it's the dining cum kitchen space, all of it, whether it is in apartments or in, homes or the extended garden. I mean, I can go on forever. I think what was key in a lot of, especially, like our firm is now 33 years plus. And when we initially started, we looked for a space, saying that we wanted to be in a space which was, our own, mainly so that we had the environment that would make everyone happy. So we looked for a site which was actually just next to the army space. So we had a lot of open space next to it. And we moved, 30 people from sitting within, a space in the city, in busy Koramangala. I'm sure everyone knows what that's like. And moved to this little quiet corner, and suddenly everyone was like, this is beautiful, this is wonderful. The feeling that one got was great. And I think that is key to get in a person who's coming into a space. And that is what we love to kind of do, try to see something, look for something that's different, something you want somebody to have that wow factor in a particular place, but not necessarily wow just for the sake of being a wow factor. You want people to kind of really relate, look at being, of course, in nature. I mean, that's something that we've always believed in. Being in Bangalore, veranda living has been an extension of our architecture. So, I think there are things that can, be listed on and on, but there are a few concepts that really, which are, bringing in the elements into architecture. Like Chandra and, they were just discussing, saying that with this brings that comfort level and that joy into spaces. Though, of course, people have complained, with all these large windows, do you know how much we have to spend for curtains?
And electricity, right? The light comes in. Do you get disappointed when we come back with such, we don't understand your ability to think forward and say, you're such a narrow, shallow person giving me an idea. Do you ever feel that?
All the
yes,
time.
It's fine. All the time. Excellent.
But of course, we really, really, work our way through and convince people to do something.
Because Fancy has been very transparent with me. You're so shallow. You don't see what others need. It's just how much of the capex that you can spend, how much you can,
No, we don't look at the figures. The figures are all for, the client to look at.
Excellent.
Let's just dream together.
Absolutely. So let me move to the educator part of it. And before we move further on your question, you just lost your first drink for today, the free drink. Yeah. You left the band down.
Thank you.
Well, you earned it. Thank you. That's it's interesting. If you see the areas that we have touched upon, none of this is feasible unless we have a base to bring the right talent to the fore, right? Who can dream, who can then translate that into a more tangible structure, sustainable structure, affordable structure, and that's something that the users will enjoy. What are your views on that, Deepta?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can. Can you hear her?
It's working.
Yes. Okay.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for having me here and this wonderful panel, and very exciting to be in a space that was part of my past, actually. I mean, I've been in the corporate and design space for a number of years, but I've been in education for the last almost 2 decades now. So I think the choice was, I want to sort of just make a couple of statements first, in the sense that when we look at teaching design, I think there are different ways of doing it, and we've sort of inherited a very old system of education, which is just about reading and regurgitating and doing the right, making sure that something is right rather than wrong. And we tend to not experiment too much. And this is why I love what Gayatri said about dreaming. And so what I try to do in terms of looking at facilitating learning, not teaching, facilitating learning is really about getting young people to get imaginative. And that's a big challenge because I sort of work beyond the imagination that we currently live in, which I will share just quickly what I mean by that. And as an architect and planner, I was always interested in outside the building. Because I always, from when I was a teenager, just thinking about the environment all the time. And I actually wanted to do environmental science, not architecture. But then, we were getting our house built in Sadashiv Nagar, and Renu Misri was, amazing. And so my mom said, why don't you try this? This is great. And so I brought in environment through that. And one of the issues I find in education is that and I was just telling somebody else earlier this evening about things like design briefs, right? Design briefs they're very static. Design this building, this is the square footage, da-da-da-da. That's not a brief, that's a spec. A brief to me, when you want to push the imagination, is not to say design a house, but how do you create a home, right? And home is where all the warm, fuzzy stuff happens, but it's also something that's not permanent because we can extend our home into the landscape. Part of our work is part of our home. So where does home begin and end? So to start to think about what are all these connections, right? And for me, the dwelling actually was very interesting. So a lot of how I try to inspire students is to actually push my own boundaries of doing research. And so my research has been really about looking at a very simple a material artifact that I think we're all familiar with, which is the Mangalore tile. We think it's sustainable. It's not. All right? It's actually a German design, and it's an extractive process that we extract clay that's thousands of years old and we produce tiles. And what I want to talk about, not necessarily the tile, but I want to sort of bring to your notice what the tile replaced, which is thatch. Thatch is great for the imagination because it's designed to hold water. It's designed to hold animals. There are creatures that live in it. And it never leaks, right? Whereas the tile is designed to take water away from the house. And it's the same thinking that we use today in designing all the buildings that we are living in and inhabiting. And then we wonder, as we push water away, we have a water crisis. Where has all the water gone, right? So we sort of like built our own strange dystopic world that we're living in. And so how do we then pique students' imaginations, right? Push the boundaries, ask critical questions. And I think that's really important to sort of say, so when we say a design brief, and I'll give you a slightly different example that I gave a young architect this evening, is we don't say design a chair. Can you design a place for me to sit? I can sit on the floor. I can sit on a bed. I can sit on a parapet. But the questions then we'll ask for clarification is really about, now, when do you sit? How do you sit? Those are important questions, the when and how, in order to design. And I think we forget these things when we're actually doing the design work. So to sort of inspire students to sort of think beyond the current capitalistic agenda.
Oh, that was, I was feeling it was my appraisal, or she was hitting below the belt. But the reality is, Ritesh, you to an extent I'm sure your real estate guys will appreciate it. When we give a brief, we need 1,000 seats. we need some collaboration areas. We need some creative areas, and that's it. And my cost is X. And we are always concerned. We can't say we need a place to sit because you give that brief, then the world is your oyster, and you end up. But absolutely true, Deepta. For us to create an environment, and there are creative ways, and you cannot teach somebody to be creative. You can only give them the experience to try, ability to try, and become better at it. Absolutely aligned. So let me reverse the trend. We understand that this office space can be designed in multiple ways. We give the briefs. We have to be thinking sustainable. From a people perspective, you're in you're managing the human resource segment. From a people perspective, do they really appreciate what we are trying to talk or convey or help them to experience?
I think, to be honest, it's a pleasure actually being here. I was thinking, what am I doing in a women in real estate? But coming here, I appreciate the work that all of you do. Now, I have a deep appreciation for the space that are created. I don't think people understand when she said we're designing a place to sit. I don't think people recognize and appreciate that enough. But what they do appreciate is the experience that they walk out with. So I can give you an example of when we created a space in our Bangalore office that was meant for collaboration, like you said, because most of the work that the engineering teams is collaboration. Sometimes it's serendipity. Some ideas come as they're working and they say, why not we work on this? It is not a desk job. Their job is not desk job because somebody is not telling them what to do and then they're just going and coding that, whatever. It is a lot of creative work that they do. So as we were creating the spaces and our real estate team came in and we're talking about what is it that we need to think about and how do we design the spaces. Most of our spaces, if you know, is co-created. So we have teams, Googlers who sit down and say what is it that they need in each of the spaces, and every element is incorporated in the space, so they feel that that's what matters to them. And I remember we had about a lot of fresh grads coming in from the IITs and the other engineering schools who come and join us. And they were looking for a campus experience. They just came into work, and it's new to them. They were looking at all the desks in the collab spaces, and they said, what does this mean for me? What does this really mean for me? And when we are creating, as people ops, as we call HR, as we are creating immersive onboarding for them, and we could take them from one flow to another to these small pockets of places and tell them how they could use all of these because this is new to them. They're coming from colleges. It is then that they knew what it means to come into a workplace. It's a fascinating experience to see the joy in some of these folks. I'm sure they will enjoy it as they move forward. But each of us, when we walk into a space, we don't appreciate the amount of work and thought that goes into it. But I'm sure people will
Totally agree. And the demand is the space has to support everybody's expectation, requirement, or maybe even there is a handicap that needs to be supported for them to be more, able to work better. People with different abilities to come forward and use the same environment in the way that anybody else will use it. If I may, back to you. You rightly pointed out it takes a long time for a house to become home, right? It takes, the bricks get a lot of life, character, you do a lot of things, and it becomes a home over a period of time. In my personal experience, my corporate life, the office became a home sooner than the house became a home, right? And but when you have budding architects, is there a way they think differently between a corporate workspace and a general creative workspace? You need to look at it differently. The problem is different, right? It's a combination of people that come into a place, whereas if it's a home or if it is something else, you think differently.
So I think there needs to be new approaches, because in my mind, when we're talking about happiness and joy and well-being, human well-being depends solely on the well-being of the environment. because everything we do and everything we use comes from there in some form or the other. And so the first thing I think is to start to understand. So I don't think the space necessarily, the space specs and all those design things will come. But where do you begin the design process, right? Is it when you get the brief, and do you sort of, or the specs, and do you just look at that and start working? Or is it a real engagement in the site? And when I mean real engagement, I mean, as architects and planners, site is part of what we do. And for me, it's not site, it's like landscapes. I work in these massive landscapes. But when I'm saying site or citing a place or citing a particular use, how do you do it, right? You have to think beyond that place. You have to think about, are you getting water? You have to look at all the resources that you need. Are you getting, what is this landscape actually? Is it an arid landscape that Bangalore is naturally? So what kind of trees do we plant here then on the site? Do we bring in jacarandas or do we want to bring in neem trees, which are actually good for the soil, right? So how do we take care of the design from a creative process of walking in the landscape, right? We all walk the site, but what do we see when we walk the site? Are we just looking at, okay, here is this rock, we can do something with it. Here is this tree that we want to save. Here is this bush that we want to get rid of. Is it just a list? Is it just an inventory? Or do we actually understand the larger systems that play out when the buildings or the spaces actually get designed, and what does that impact, what kind of impact does that have on its environment? And I think that's really important. So that's the kind of way in which I work with students, in the sense of getting them to start to consider, okay, you thought about this, but what about that? Playing devil's advocate, playing good, fun games to get them to be critical, but also to start to consider what it means to physically, bodily engage, and then think from that perspective of what design can mean and what space is. And is it space or is it placemaking?
Interesting, placemaking. Thank you. Go to you on that. I mean, if you would summarize this, any special project I can think of that you can share your experience, which sort of heightened the experience of joy, happiness, I enjoyed going to work, I mean, you got the feedback, 30 awards over 32 years.
Well, I think, basic concepts that we hold very dear to, our hearts, Namit and me, when we started, was that whatever it is, come what may, we must look at, light, ventilation, and natural, a natural kind of atmosphere, with as much green as possible, whatever that space is. And we've kind of held on to it tightly. So whatever space you do, you bring in as much as you can of all of this.
And do you have the pressure of reuse when you design?
Yep.
A lot of it?
Of course, yeah. So, but the thing is, it's all, different projects prioritize differently. We did a training center for Bosch, which was really, when you were talking, it just came to me that, we were talking to the user group and, talking about what they wanted and got all the specs. But then finally it was like, how do you bring energy to, say, 25 conference rooms? So, and how do people relate? You have people coming from across the country and maybe even beyond the country. How do they relate to each of this? And of course, Bosch being Bosch wanted everything as numbers, This could be this and this could be the numbering of each of these rooms. And we said, no, let people learn to relate, even in terms of wayfinding. Let's see how they can kind of, find their spaces in a more interesting space. So we came up with this idea of actually working with names of states for each of these, conference areas and meeting rooms, and then, did certain amount of artwork based on, what the state was known for, and, a little more interesting, thoughts about that particular state, whether it was their art or whether it was, personality, maybe, the life bridges of Meghalaya, these things. But what was fun was that, the concept that we came up with is that, people enjoy education even when they are working and they're open to it. So we said, okay, let's give that little extra. Let's get people to kind of understand things a little more or want to learn some of these things. So we did bring in certain areas of, Indian philosophy. We said, okay, it's talking about the chakras, talking about how the chakras relate to colors in different, flows of the building. And you question it all, and then as much as you want to look into, you do. So these were things that we said would be an underlying concept, and people kind of really relate and kind of get enthused to kind of be in that space and learn more about themselves.
I think today's generation, or probably even the workforce, are far more informed and knowledgeable about sustainable practices, right? And I think that poses more of a challenge when we attract talent or when we attract people to come and work with us. But before I go to Ritesh, could we have some mics for the audience to ask questions so that we save some time? Ritesh, to you. With this kind of expectation from businesses today, I think sustainability is the order of the day. It is not, can I have one? Right? Unless you have a practice, unless you have a product which is sustainable, building on various things that we spoke about, Ritesh, firms would not come to you, right? As a person developing a large unit for business to establish. Where are you with that? The buildings of the future, sustainable, attractive, supporting the various expectations. Where are you with any of the one? You mentioned Ramanujam, but if you could just build on that to say, okay, how do you plan to move forward in that particular space?
Thank you. I guess as I was saying earlier, we're a bit of an elephant in the room, and I say this on behalf of the developer community because you're not building for self-use, you're not building for one client. And I say this with respect, but again, thank you for being our partners, and I look forward to perhaps the cafeteria, which will have even more variety in our developments now in Gurugram. But we're looking forward to that. And Venkat, we thought, that having LEED certified developments, taking a step forward and saying we'll do net zero developments, taking another step forward saying health and well-being, platinum health and well-being certified developments were enough. And when we had world-class partners like Google coming in saying, well, now let's do a whole life carbon assessment study for your developments to see what have you used and the impact that this will have, because our name will be associated with it. So thank you for pushing those boundaries again. The point that I was making is we're not building for self-use, and something that you build needs to be right, Venkat. We were speaking about joy, we were speaking about passion. And again, I'll talk a little bit about Ramanujan, and I say why that is so dear to our heart and why we often refer to that as our trophy asset. I'd say the joy there is a culmination of how can you work with the community per se. And again, we were talking about joy and what is the definition of joy. For some, and again, on the OMR phase 1, when we were amongst the first developments where we know how the traffic movement in our country can be, and we know how difficult it can be to cross a busy road. We said joy perhaps will be that we will have a foot overbridge constructed from the MRTS line and have employees or people, more importantly, get down from the train and with a smile on their face cross the road and come straight to the asset. That what we thought was joy. What we again thought joy was, again, different definition of joy, on that road, be able to work with the traffic marshals and all the way through for about 5 kilometers, also use artificial intelligence and tell everyone who's coming in saying, you will have a clutter free, easier, happier access to the park so that you're able to be happier and more productive. That's what we thought was joy. We again thought joy will be if you're able to manufacture land, literally, and have a podium-style development done so that when people in a place like Chennai have solar passive architecture at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, in a place like Chennai, walk on the podium to be able to enjoy that sea breeze at any point of time, mingle with their partners and have a smile in the face in the afternoon walk. That's what we thought was joy. Was there a substantial amount of capital that we spent building it 12 years back? Oh, absolutely. Are we delighted about what we had built so that we're able to enable stickiness, not with clients, but for people overall, for them to be able to come in and enjoy the time that we spend there? That's what we thought was joy. And we're delighted to be able to extend that into other developments. And again, as I said, this is not what we're building. People within real estate and construction and overall the amount of carbon that we emit, I think each one of us in any form and manner can make a significant improvement. And I'd perhaps just end with, by the way, just the one final piece. Joy for our architect friends can be if you were to create a 45,000 square feet floor plate, and instead of having perhaps 20 plus columns, have 4 columns so that you're able to unleash your creativity and have a lot of circulation areas, etc. That's what we thought was joy. Again, I'll end with this one quote where Mary Ann said that we frankly don't need 100 people doing ESG perfectly. We'd need 100,000 people doing ESG imperfectly. Everyone can do their bit, and that's what we're hoping we'd be able to do with our developments.
Thanks, Ritesh. There's a lot of pressure behind the scene. Too much of pressure. I can feel the heat. The lady is almost going to turn off the mic. Questions which will have only a yes or no answer from the audience. Anyone? I suspect. This typical, usual suspect. Yes. You need a mic?
Thank you, Venkat. Great meeting you once again. And good evening, to everybody. Ritu from Boeing. Well, I wear multiple hats, and some of the things that you all spoke about is what we grapple with, and I shared a lot of, emotions as Venkat was speaking about the challenges we face managing corporate real estate, creating those wonderful magical spaces, allowing people to dream, and then strike a balance between, your spend versus the dream that you want to build. But I wanted to just hear from you. I think one of the aspects of what we are missing today in the built environment is the neurodivergent workforce, right? And I would love to hear, how you all are trying to, from your academic journey and to the spaces you create, and you from an HR perspective, how are you all looking at joy and happiness for that neurodivergent workforce, which is very, very integral part of, the spaces where people come and thrive and they really want to do the next level of work for the companies that they get hired with. That's my question. Anybody can take it.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. I'm not going to say yes or no. I think, in a nutshell, I think we tend to over-design everything. Everything has to be specific, so specific. We've forgotten that this is actually a very flexible garment. It can do many things, just like the dhoti. You can live out of it, right? So how can we design or think about teaching or facilitating learning about design and designing spaces that are flexible, truly flexible, not just about giving enough space for something to happen, right? Can it morph, right? And can it become something for anyone? And I think that is really important. When we don't over-design, we allow for other things to happen that we cannot predict. And for me, that is where because I think I'm neurodivergent. Like, I've got multiple things going on in my head about everybody's. And so I think, there's a way in which to design spaces that can encourage thinking beyond, and for people who can already think in multiple frames simultaneously. So not to over-design.
I guess that's all we have time for. See, the volume in the mic also went up to say, okay, you got to say it's all over. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience, and I hope you had a good time. Thank you.
Thank you, Venkat. So we're going to have the questions for dinner time. So please hold on to your questions and we can probably ask them at that point of time. We'd like to thank, I'm just inviting Sunita and Fancy to come. Thank you so much for sharing some heartfelt insights. A huge round of applause for everybody, please. Moving on to our annual event sponsors. First up, we have Adrian's. Adrian's, which is known for building workspaces of the future at the very intersection of design, technology, and experience. Their work is driven by their ever-growing passion to create sensorial, functional, inspirational, and exclusive work environment for their global clients. With a client-centric vision, they compassionately work towards delivering the best in class. Our next sponsor is How We Work. They are a young brand established in 2016, which offers furnishings to work, socialize, collaborate, and relax. And we thank them for providing this wonderful furniture which we used for our chats and our panel discussion. And coming to Merino, which was established in 1967, they started playing, they were just doing this humble plywood, and then now they've become constantly been introducing very new products. So please take a moment and participate in the video campaign, Be Different, at the ground floor. So let's get to know a little bit more about How We Work and Merino.
In the world of design and commercial real estate, Howie Workspaces provides a one-stop solution for all your collaborative furniture and meeting pod needs, catering to corporate, hospitality, educational and terminal industry. In collaboration with Nurus, a distinguished brand established in 1927 with a manufacturing base in Ankara, Howie Workspaces is proud to be the exclusive partner representing Nurus in India. To complement the wide range, we have partnered with European brands like Deborén, Espatio and Infiniti, each celebrated for their commitment towards sustainability and innovative designs. Our expertly curated products cater to modern workspaces, fostering collaboration and flexibility. From open office layouts to private meeting pods, we design with functionality and style in mind. Trusted by top industry leaders, we are proud to have transformed countless workspaces into hubs of innovation and teamwork. Sustainability is integral to everything we do. 24.51% reduction in carbon emissions, supported by LEED certifications. Our products reflect the highest standards of environmental responsibility. Together, we are creating a more sustainable tomorrow. Ready to transform your workspace? Let's collaborate. Visit Howie Workspaces today to find the perfect solutions for your office needs. In the world of
Video.
India, a potpourri of culture, where art and tradition intertwine, where echoes the delicate touch of artisans, where every corner whispers tales of heritage. We at Merino feel a deep reverence for this rich heritage. From motifs inspired by the grandeur of royal Maharaja palaces, to intricate patterns inspired by ethereal embroidery from the heart of India, and to the sophisticated masterpieces woven in time from the country's east. We celebrate this treasure trove of timeless artistry, handcrafted with love. They are not just designs, they are curation of cultural experiences. Ancient craftsmanship and contemporary elegance. They are Sampada.
So, wow, that was really beautiful. Now, let me take this opportunity to introduce WiREnet to all of you. WiREnet is an association for women professionals in real estate industry, and we are proudly registered as a non-profit society. Our foundation is built upon powerful vision to increase diversity in real estate and construction industries in the most inclusive way possible. At the core of our values, WiREnet believes in creating equal opportunities for all, while also championing the idea of diverse thought, yet inclusive decision-making. Our mission is simple: to connect, network, grow, to provide and enable mentorship opportunities, to foster learning and knowledge sharing, and to share positive experiences that empower and inspire growth. Over the past 3 years, we worked tirelessly towards this mission and have made strides that we are truly proud of. Let's see a video of our journey for the last 3 years.
"3 years, too young." WiREnet has been founded with a vision to increase diversity in the most inclusive way in the real estate and construction industry. Already many strides ahead in various directions and with miles to go as a community, taking baby steps towards empowering more women in the real estate fraternity. Our annual general meetings that bring transparency to the workings of this organization while honing the skills of our governing council members into building a community that is resilient and purposeful. Annual events that enable our industry to come forth and support the cause of diversity while indulging in some inspirational and meaningful conversations and networking. Bringing to you knowledge series in various formats encompassing diverse topics that are relevant, enlightening, and connecting us to our roots as we march ahead. Campus tours for learning it all under one roof, understanding the journey with both the stumbles and the achievements. Forging strong partnerships with other industry bodies through affiliated events across the country, bringing opportunities for women to voice their robust experience and power-packed insights to the industry at large. University engagement nurturing the young minds to the plethora of opportunities in the built environment as they embark on their aspirational journey ahead. Bringing to you our podcast through the Voice of WiREnet series. Project for Change, reimagining labor settlements to bring about sustainable and impactful change to the construction industry through the process of dialogue, research, publications, advocacy, and partnerships. Our seasoned minds sharing and mentoring the future leaders and setting them up on a path of success. We don't forget to let our hair down and network, bringing to town the socials for women only. From Bangalore to Delhi, Mumbai to Hyderabad, the WiREnet Socials event has connected many female professionals while igniting multiple conversations, forging strong bonds of community and friendship. WiREnet believes in creating equal opportunities for all, while strongly aligning to the idea of being diverse in thought, yet inclusive in decision making. It aims to be the voice for change in the real estate and built environment, contributing actively towards the growth of all women in the field of real estate. We've come a long way, but have further to go, and we couldn't have done it without you. So come along and be part of this wonderful experience called WiREnet.
That was wonderful, wasn't it? So, as we grow and we continue to grow, we realize the guidance we receive is essential to shaping our next phase. It's with great excitement I share with you that this year we have Malvika Harita, who has honored us by being a member for Board Advisory. She is a marketing and communications veteran, educator, mentor, leader, TEDx speaker with 41 years of experience. Amongst the many hats she wears, she was the ex-CEO of Saatchi & Saatchi, founder of Brand Circle, resident member of NSRCL, and the first woman board member of the IM Bangalore and Visakhapatnam. Ma'am, we are delighted to have you as our advisory board member, and thank you for consenting to address our guests today. We request you to share a few thoughts.
Good evening. Thank you, WiREnet, for having me here. It's a great honor for me, and I've learned as much from all my young mentees as I hope I have shared with them. The theme of today's conference is all about building happy spaces. And all the speakers who have gone before me have spoken about this, about building happy. So I thought I'd speak about something else which bothers me as an educator and a mentor, about being happy. Before I begin, I must start with a disclaimer. I'm not a God woman, but I'm seriously considering that as my third career, because I want to buy that Lamborghini that I could never afford on my Saatchi salary. I also don't give gyan, and everything I'm going to talk about very, very briefly today is based on my personal journey over the last 66 years. So now you know exactly how old I am. I'm actually enjoying my 60s because now I don't really have to bother about optics and what people think about me. Yeah, I can just be myself, and that's such a liberating, empowering feeling. You're a group of men and women who create, build, and manage space for organizations and individuals. And while the environment, as we have just been discussing over the last hour or so, is crucial for fostering a happier, more productive workforce, it can only do so much. Ultimately, what matters most are the people within that environment and the happiness they carry within themselves. Also, have you ever thought about how you can create these happy spaces if you're not personally happy? So let's speak about building and managing a happier you. I'm sorry, but this is where my teacher hat comes on, and what people say is my business mommy side, but I think you're going to get that anyway, whether you like it or not. So here are a couple of my thoughts on how we can manage and build this happier you. Let's define happiness. It's defined as a positive, emotional state of joy and contentment, reflecting overall life satisfaction. And that's thanks to my third prompt to ChatGPT. It started with a 100-word essay, and we ended with this. I'm going to share with you a few things which I believe have contributed to my being a fairly happy person. I don't say I have my downs. I'm not up all the time. I do have my downs. But some of the things that have actually made me much happier over the years. The thought is your job and career, and I'm sure all of you face this, is it always going to be interesting? No, it isn't. And as Dory says in Finding Nemo, just keep swimming. You should actually be happy when nothing mega happens in life. And that actually means that you're doing your job right. In my career as an entrepreneur, a corporate executive, and now a professor and mentor, I have realized that life is not just highs. In fact, there are many, many more lows, believe me, than highs. And there are periods of very routinized activity, which a number of you as young millennials find very boring, because nothing is seeming to happen. And my advice, again from personal experience, is this steady state is extremely preferred. Maybe boring, but sometimes, because when you least expect it, God has this very nasty way of throwing you a curveball, and you don't know what hit you. So in perspective and hindsight, I believe that a steady state isn't a bad thing, not all the time perhaps, but it is not a bad thing to have to go through. I keep wondering why, and this is a bit of a philosophical question that I keep asking myself, why does God throw curveballs at you, right? COVID being one of them. And I think it's because maybe he's bored, or maybe because he just wants to see if you're still awake. So don't change jobs and careers because you feel they're boring. Use that time to improve your knowledge and skills. The first step to building a happier you is to learn to explore, understand, assimilate, and build your own personal knowledge base. I'm a strong advocate that knowledge is actually power, especially if you're a woman or if you are a non-alpha male, and I say this with all respect. Being a smart talker without substance is akin to a stick of candy fluff. And in architectural terms, it's like building the roof without a foundation. So what I always tell all my students and mentees is that build your knowledge base, because that is the only thing that you truly own. As Oscar Wilde said, the secret of happiness is that it's not about doing what you like, but in liking what you do. So find satisfaction in what you do it perfectly, because sometimes you cannot change a job or profession because of family responsibilities, particularly for a lot of us women, very difficult to throw your hat over a windmill. And this is when I remember, and this is what has helped me in my life journey, I remember our Indian concept of following your dharma and doing your duty. And this is something we're beginning to forget. There is no greater joy than actually fulfilling your dharma. Can you be 100% happy? No way, but you can try. Again, quoting the Dalai Lama, I say that happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions. In this current generation of instant gratification, we believe that everything needs to be given to us. Believe me, it doesn't work that way. It's something that you have to work towards. In today's world dominated by social media, we find ourselves in a perpetual state of envy as we constantly compare ourselves to all the very exciting influencers and celebrities that we see. And we are constantly seeking external validation for our success and instant gratification, of course. If you follow social media, and believe me, all these things that I'm talking about, I have actually gone through. You go through this state of envy because there's always someone who's happier, richer, or prettier than you. And I tell myself today, and this is easy to do at my age when I can look back and say, good for them. You never see people on social media having a bad day, do you? I'm sure they do, including the Ambanis. Remember, Mark Zuckerberg is a brilliant guy who's actually built, I don't know, his $1 trillion fortune, I guess, on inciting human envy, right? Which is a primal emotion. And all of us are falling victim to this, this whole thing that we have created, this cloud we have created of social media. I'm not against social media. It's come to stay, but I think we need to use it wisely and judiciously so that it doesn't impact our souls. And what bothers me as an educator is to see the way it's defining the way young people think, act, and behave. So the only person I compete with is myself, trying to be a better me. Others don't really matter. Another bit of advice is to have a passion. And if you're lucky, as I have been, where my work has always been my passion, and it still is, you're a very, very blessed human being. So you forgive the boring parts of life, and believe me, all of us have really boring lives sometimes. I see the lady from Google nodding at me. Yeah, even Google can get boring. Yeah. So you forgive the boring parts of your life because you actually love what you're doing. And that's my wish for all of you. Find something that you love to do. And if you can't, build a hobby or a passion that you can work with. Again, I must emphasize that it should be a real hobby, a real passion, and not an Instagrammable one. Having said that, and I think some of my mentees who are in this room will agree, do you have a purpose and a plan? It's great to have passion. All of us have passion. We do nothing about it. Like Miss World, every year she decides to have world peace and remove world hunger, and every year we have a war and a famine, right? So don't be a Miss World. Have a purpose and a plan, especially in today's VUCA world. How are you going to get there? Do you have a plan A? And after COVID, I have a plan A to Z, right? A B is not enough anymore. You need to think, you need to believe in yourself, and I strongly believe that you need to have what I call a POA, or a plan of action, because otherwise it just remains candy fluff. Tolerance, love, acceptance, and humility. I know these are very nice old-fashioned words, but they're all needed if you need to be happy. One of the greatest things about my life, and when I look back on it, I realize how lucky I am. I cherish my relationships across various age groups, across sexual preferences, across people with different religious beliefs, social strata, and backgrounds, because they actually enhance my life tremendously. What is happening is we are becoming so blinkered in our lives, and we've all become what we call in Sanskrit, kupastha mandukam, which is big frogs in little ponds that we don't see outside our little, literally a bubble that we have built. Our joint family, our Indian joint families, where multiple generations coexisted harmoniously despite conflicts. No joint family is happy, believe me, were amazing. And urbanization has actually destroyed this whole concept, this rich, naturally diverse, and inclusive ecosystem. You may not agree with everything your elders say or the rest of the family says, but you can respect their beliefs without trying to change them. I have come to terms with what I call a nuclear joint family. Some of you may have heard speaking about it. And we've actually built or building our family abode. So we have 3 different dwelling units for my brother, my son, and myself. We live together in the same property, but we do not get into each other's hair. And I think this is one of the things I'm very proud of, our nuclear joint family. I also come from a different era from most of you, where disagreements with people about their beliefs and thoughts didn't mean losing friendships, but rather added value through differing perspectives. And it makes me extremely unhappy to see what's happening today, where it's only my way or the highway. We don't listen to anything anyone else has to say. Another key lesson that I've learned regarding personal happiness, and especially for the women in this audience, is the art of saying no. You know the word no? Yeah. Clearly yet politely when necessary. This is a skill, and this is a life skill, believe me, that many of us lack, especially because of our cultural norms. We never like to say no to anybody. But that leads us into doing things which we personally dislike, and it gives us unnecessary grief and resentment. So in spite of a couple of minutes of unpopularity, please, ladies and gentlemen, learn to say no. Believe me, it works. We also spend too much time worrying about optics and what they will say. Remember, they don't feed you, right? You feed yourself. So forget about what other people think about you. Please learn to have the courage of your convictions. And sometimes, maybe, here I'm beginning to sound like a little God woman, but sometimes accept God's will and build a strategy to cope with whatever he throws your way. Instead of saying, why me, I always ask myself, why not me? What's so special about you that you don't have anything negative in your life? I think it actually builds character. I've survived my father dying when I was 19, supporting my family, a divorce, single parenthood, and cancer with all its attendant side effects and health problems, and a tough career. As I said, I started my career 40-odd years ago, where there were no concessions given to women. And I'm here, aren't I? So stop worrying. Stop worrying. It's a waste of time. It just gives you diabetes and blood pressure. Remember, for every moment you're angry or worried or envious or morose, you lose 60 seconds of happiness. So start living today and build, please, a happier you. God bless.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry, I'm just a little lost of words. Thank you so much for those beautiful words. We are truly honored to have you as part of WiREnet. Now, to express our gratitude, I'd like to invite Shobha Raghunathan and Aishwarya Nagalingaswamy to present a token of appreciation to Malvika. Now, as we continue this evening, I invite the rest of our wonderful Governing Council members to join us on stage. Please join me in welcoming Fancy George, Laila Khalil, Renuka Rajgopal, Smiti Sud, Sunita Kondur, and also our WiREnet Community Manager, Varsha Timmappa. Varsha, come quickly, quickly, quickly. Let's give them a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, and for the incredible work they do. So as we move on, I'm so excited to announce that we have currently open to new memberships. And if you sign up today, you will be getting a membership for 13 and a half months. Yes, you heard me right. Okay, so there you go. So if you just sign up today on spot, we will give you, you will be continuing a member from today to the end of the year, which is going to be free. And the next year is going to be something you're going to be with us till the end of the year. So please grab this opportunity. All the women in the audience, it's been an amazing journey. It's a lot of magic. You'll meet a lot of wonderful people, so please don't miss out on this opportunity. So that's something. On that note, I think we're now on to our grand finale. My dear gentlemen, and the ladies, get up for our keynote speaker, Jay Datta. Jay, the Nick Fury of UX of Deutsche Bank, orchestrates user experience design globally to enhance DB's diverse investment banking products and platforms. With over 25 years' experience, Jay has assembled and led Avenger-level design teams across, across projects, across enterprise, consumer, and consumer domains, delivering time-critical multi-million-dollar projects. Jay has spearheaded projects like Bangalore Airport Identity and Wayfinding and the Arogya Setu app. He is the founder of Design Up Conference, one of the most influential design in tech conferences globally. Passionate about rethinking systems and relationships through design, let's hear more from Jay himself on Design for Happy. Over to you, Jay.
That's okay. Thank you so much. I think, like Shanti was saying, I'm feeling a little bit of a misfit, a man in a not a real estate world. But it's lovely to hear so many interesting conversations. The good part is, at one point of time in my life, and I come from Ahmedabad, and I used to live not far from Sangat, the architectural practice of B.V. Doshi. I wanted to be an architect, accidentally ended up being a type designer, typographer, and eventually a UX designer, partly because typography's nature is very technical and artistic both. So with that, let me share some snippets of my world and see what does happy mean in possibly spaces or places. Thank you. So yeah, I loved the presentation just before, and ma'am, I think what you talked about, I think joy keeps coming in sparks and going in sparks, and that's the beauty of it. Unless, of course, you become into the state of nirvana, where you are in a constant state of joy, maybe, that's a different story. But I guess we are all in several light years away from that for the moment, here at least. So I'll talk about sparking moments of joy, not necessarily forever joy per se. The fundamental question that I began with, I come from the world of user experience, is that are there principles, are there learnings, are there things that I have stumbled upon and accidentally kind of broken things and learned, help spark joy beyond screens? And by the way, for those of you who, I'm sure you know, all of you know what UX is, but let me just kind of my point of view. It is about, I think for centuries we know how a door works and how a window works and how things in the physical world work, a glass and all of that. Over the last 4 or 5 or 6 decades, when computers came in and became more and more mainstream, we didn't know how to negotiate with this thing which kept appearing and disappearing, and you close it and it disappears and stuff like that. I think that was the start of human-computer interfaces. That was, and still is very much. From that came interaction design. We dropped the word human-computer and we just said interaction. Then came the word user experience. Actually, user experience is a fairly old word. But in recent circulation, now it's the world of product design. Of course, product designers, in the sense of people who used to design physical spaces, are pretty angry because they said, hey, these digital guys are taking over our world. But we have been always forever stealing lots of different things. Like, for example, we had information architecture, so we stole from your line of things. We had usability analysts, we stole from accountants, just to make it sound all very legit and good. So anyway, let's look at how and the what. So I have 4 stories for you, and I think if at any point of time we are going too slow, Abha, please tell me to speed up and we'll go fast. And 4 learnings, things that I have accidentally stumbled upon or wish I had known before, and and hopefully some of this helps. These are not solutions. I don't know your world good enough to offer you solutions, but these are just learnings that I've had. So a little backstory. I'm almost there. I've been around for a longer time. I kind of was calculating sitting here, and I think it's closer to, it's going to be 30 years very soon that I've been in the profession. Still seems like the other day that I walked out from the National Institute of Design when there were no VCs, no UX design, no Google, no app. Actually, Apple was still there. Apple and Adobe were some of the first forerunners in our world, and we just had the laser printer 2, which is a PDF and all of that. And as a type designer, this was like, wow, this is amazing. So if I look at my work overall, there are kind of 4 large phases overall. One is the world of branding, which is what from typography to branding, which I entered. I've had a lot of once-in-a-lifetime projects, though this moment also is a once-in-a-lifetime. Me standing here, you sitting there, we are all having this conversation and so on. But anyway, I think seeing my identity, which was not my favorite identity, by the way, 50th year of India's independence, 3 prime ministers, 2 of them ex. standing there was always a special moment. Of course, I worked with spaces, people like Philip Stark, and he's done this beautiful restaurant in Mauritius. So a lot of this L'Eau Rock and L'Eau Saint-Geron and a bunch of these things. And of course, moving on to the early world of interaction design, UX design, information architecture, whatever we called them back then. Going on to what my very first boss invited me, and she said, come over, you got to do an airport. So I'll tell you more about that. And of course, the world of UX, I led and grew the practice for Adobe here in India, and then went on to do Make My Trip, which was like an interesting project, and interesting in an interesting word. And of course, something which you might have loved and hated in equal measure, Arogya Setu, which many of you, for different reasons, would have carried on in your pocket. It was a crazy one. And the one which I've been working the longest, never getting paid for, but I love the most, is Design Up, a personal side project pretty much. It's been there since 2016, and again, some lessons from there as well. And like what WiREnet does, a lot of other work in research and mentoring, so stuff like that we do. The fundamental thing is we try to sort of make sure, how do you sort of demystify design in the world of technology, because design is what makes tech edible. Tech is very sharp edges. You can't eat it really unless you have a layer and a veneer of design per se. So let's start in the very beginning, back to the future. And the question for all of you in the audience is, how old do you think this kitchen is? Any guesses? Sorry? 30? Any other guesses? 40? Okay, you're halfway there. This is 101 years old. So this is, by the way, this is an early experiment with Bauhaus, and for all the architects, I'm sure all of you know what Bauhaus is. It had a huge influence on my design education per se. And interestingly, I learned much later that this kitchen is what UX design owes its early sort of roots to. Because this is the phase in life when men and women are both working. They have moved, the roots have moved, they're working together, they're cooking together. They had kitchens, and someone wanted to redesign the kitchen and rethink the kitchen. And the kitchen is, if you think, very much like UX design. You have an output and an outcome which is there, but the pathways are different. We talk about flows in UX design. This actually, I remember seeing in V&A, the designs which were drawn up for this, how the pathways might be. You're cooking, cleaning, cutting, chopping, getting it together, and the food comes. The outcome is the food, but there is a process. It's almost like buying a ticket is your outcome, or ordering flowers is your outcome, but there's a process in the middle. So I think this is where it was, and this is Bauhaus, I think, started by an architect, Walter Gropius, shut down by the Nazis. Of course, a whole bunch of them moved, and I think for those of you in architecture, there's this whole relation with Chicago and the new sort of Bauhaus, and so I'll not go into detail, but they influenced everything from, of course, architecture, but more in terms of typography, type design, people kind of radically sort of going off into other areas, photography, and how what we see in terms of the mix of photo and typography together. This is 1926, something called the Frankfurt Kitchen. So essentially things started moving after that, and people started thinking, hey, this makes sense. I mean, how can we modularize it? And this is another kind of thing which is, of course, it's easy to kind of say that co-working with people that you love is, of course, a recipe for joy, for happiness, for a thing. This is, again, in workspaces as well. So let me shift another many years ahead into a place called 3 Mile Island. Anyone has any idea what this is, what notorious incident this is related to? Any thoughts? Okay, so nuclear accident, a disaster which is probably one of the worst civilian nuclear disasters in the US history. Thankfully, the fallout wasn't that large that the East Coast was wiped out, but it could have been. And this is, again, people looking at it. So this is the space in which these people worked. I mean, they all co-working, not necessarily in a happy place with a happy set of people. You can see a whole set of buttons and dials. And Don Norman, who was a young guy starting in cognitive sciences, was one of the people sent to do an audit and see what went wrong. And he said, hey, there are 14 buttons in red, and all 14 mean 14 different things, and some 16 in green, which also means 16 different things. So you actually need a user manual to make sure what is happening. In the event of a nuclear meltdown, can you imagine the atmosphere in the room where people are scrambling to figure out what this meant and what this meant in that condition? So it was absolutely unintuitive, and that's what he talks about, that we usually blame it on human beings. Human error is a very common term, but I think there is a whole lot of lack of thinking which leads to this kind of situations. Don Norman, of course, went on to write The Design of Everyday Things and a whole bunch of other books, and this is, again, one of those things where a cognitive overload is, of course, not a recipe for a very happy scenario, or not for sparking joy for sure. Unless, of course, you have a good room with a view, and the room with a view is changing, then it's probably not that bad, and you see sunrises and sunsets in Sydney and Tokyo and Delhi, and without the smog, hopefully. So I think this is a reminder to all of ourselves, and where we talk about the cost of good design and bad design, and why is good design so expensive? Because the cost of bad design can be way more expensive, and I think this is one of those things. So 1988, after a lot of deliberation, of course, the word user experience is coined. But if you think about it, everything is user experience. I mean, getting into this, getting out of here, kind of being in the auditorium, driving a car, everything is a user experience. So it should not ideally be limited just to screens. And that's what probably the submission is. Of course, we had a chance we hosted Don recently in Bangalore. He's 88. Still jumping around, and his secret to being fit is to choose parents very wisely, which I'm not sure how many of you have done so, but yeah, that's a good idea kind of to do. So, but here's the first thing, which is very often we design things and we think so much of materials and so much of textures and so much of typography, and we go into details, and people like us will go into so much details, but often we forget the context of use. This is what the nuclear disaster was talking about, which the kitchen was not talking about. The kitchen was a perfect study in understanding context in which couples work, and how do we work together. So, second story, an airport of our own. So I was happily working away in UK, in lots of different places in Europe and South Africa and all that for many years, until my very first boss, and this is beyond Y2K, and I was just talking about how long I've been in the UX. I think 2019 is when I started, when it was such an amazing thing to see you getting a text message because money has been created into your bank account. Now you just hate text messages, they're all over. Everything is a text message, and you said, my God, this is too much. If you look at it, the phones look very weird then. There was no Apple yet. They would be invented much later. There was something called Palm, which was like a calendar and everything, and then you had Blackberries. How many of you used Blackberries? Wow, lots of people, which dates you, by the way. So this is early days of UX, and then I was enjoying my ride in the world of user experience, and then my very first boss, Sujata Keshavan Guha, calls me and says, have you done airports? And I'm like, what is doing an airport? I have no idea. I'm not an architect. I'm not a planner of any sort. What am I supposed to do with an airport? And she said, well, we got to find an identity for an airport, and this has got to be a once-in-a-lifetime project. This is one of my many once-in-a-lifetime projects. Arogya Setu also was promised the same thing. This is a once-in-a-lifetime project. So there are many once-in-a-lifetime projects. And I had actually, the idea seemed very interesting, and of course, 2008 recession was looming, and I was running my own studio in Manchester, very close, right between the Man United football stadium and the Man Manchester, the Old Trafford cricket ground. Actually, they are walkable distances, and we are right in the middle. And every time a football match happened, you had to close office because who knows what might happen. I mean, there are fish and chip shops everywhere. So it was a little crazy. Anyway, so she said, have you done an airport? And I said, of course not. And I'm like, what is doing an airport? And she said, we got to find an identity. So we had a lot of debates upon what the identity of the airport should be. A Zurich consortium was leading this. They wanted something very clean. It should have no political angles to it, no names of historical figures, and so on and so forth. It should be just called the Bangalore Airport or the Bengaluru Airport. And the 3 or 4 things which was kind of talked about was, of course, the IT possibility. Let's talk about Bangalore as the IT city, and can we do an identity around IT? The second one was biotech, which was also then kind of doing very well, so can we have biotech? The third thing was heritage and history without being too sort of, maybe more arts, culture, heritage, that was the other one. And the third thing was sort of nature. And for me, nature was like, not, I mean, of course, I mean, Bangalore was known more for its gardens, but coming back from the UK, whenever I used to get up in the morning and take my car to work, I would see these flowers all over my windshield. And this was like such a beautiful moment. And I kept pushing for it and pushing for it. And they were saying, no, but there are these other 3 ideas also that are equally good. And to be honest with you, we had some brilliant ideas all over. So I made this logo, and I mean, I was just still stuck on the number 2 and number 3 when a very young and quiet intern, she comes up to me and says, I want to speak with you, and do you know, have you, when you're coming down, and remember this is the old airport in Bangalore, when you're flying down, do you remember seeing all those houses? I'm like, yeah, what about them? Like the colors? And boom, it struck me. She said, this is the land of the Kanjivarams and those brightly colored houses, and you're still making a very European palette out there. I mean, yeah, 16 years of being in Europe kind of makes you kind of very subtle and grays and kind of, and those colors are hers. She chose those colors. I said, you got to take over from here and you choose the colors. And I was kind of, first I did those reds and I said, it doesn't work. And I think every time I see those people wearing those teal thing, I remember those conversations over there. Of course, to sell my idea and to sell, even though I was the creative director at that point of time, it was still a very, very democratic process in which we kind of share ideas and show it. And of course, I was trying to sell this. And everyone saw in this a hummingbird. I'm not sure that's what you see, but I mean, of course, I won't see that. By the way, if you see in the background, there's all construction work going on. We had the chance to go on all the runways. I've been to the runways of Hyderabad, Delhi, Bangalore, and Bombay. So I think we did a lot of other work with other airports also, but Bangalore remains very special. So I think we had the chance to go up on all the ATC towers, go on the runways, be in those. Actually, when they were doing the drills with those fire trucks, you'll see those are like huge fire trucks. So I think those are the special moments. This is still work in the background in progress. For me, I think this was a personal favorite. The smallest little thing on the side of the trolleys. This is those fire trucks, and those are huge. I mean, it can take some 8 to 10 people in there. And I was not part of T2 at all. But I think the beauty of it is that this idea, this notion endured, and it's gone to the next there. So I think here's the second sort of thing, which is joy comes from having the pride of place and the place of pride. You can play around it in both ways. You're like, this is my airport. This is, every time I come back, this is my airport. Or this airport means something to me. This city means something to me. So I heard this, and this probably resonates the best. I think success is when your idea is no longer your own, but everyone owns that idea. I mean, it's like, the ownership has got transferred. Everyone owns it, and that's the beauty of it. And I think this is something that Bangalore Airport taught me overall. The third story, and how are we doing for time? Are we okay? Yeah, sure. Okay, so this one was a tricky one. So I don't know how many of you remember what Make My Trip used to be. It was one very colorful, gaudily colorful app. And it was crazy, and every time you opened it, there was discount, buy two, get one kind of thing, or get 20%, 30% here, 10%. It was just discounts and bright colors everywhere kind of thing. And so I used to work in the VC world, and the VCs wanted me to work with them, and I was like, no way am I going to work. This is the world's, I mean, not world's, I would say India's worst design app ever, and so many millions of people use that. But then the more I thought about it, the more you realize that India is very cost conscious. So even if people give you 10 rupees off or 20 rupees off, you ignore bad design and say, okay, they're giving me 20 rupees off, so big deal kind of thing. So I think loyalty is kind of very fickle. So anyway, this is what it used to look like. I mean, sometimes actually you could not even log in to cancel your bookings. I'm not sure whether you remember that experience. So then they would tell you, forget it. Go to the Indigo or whatever kind of Jet Airways used to be there. Go to Jet Airways and you can just cancel it at their end, not at Make My Trip. You can't even log in. So this is what it used to be, very colorful, very bright and very blue and all of that. So I went to Deep Kalra, who's obviously very, very design savvy, but he's also extremely business savvy. So in this case, the business savvy part of him took over in the Make My Trip. I'm sure if he was getting you to do a house for him, would be very personal and will be all the fine design choices there. So I had to rephrase it. He's the big boss and the founder. I had to rephrase it, and I said, you know what, there is no my in Make My Trip. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you know what, I mean, this is the age of personalization and hyper-personalization. And forget Amazon. Even before Amazon, there is the saying used to go that Tesco can tell a lady whether she's pregnant or not basis the choices she makes in what she's buying. This is data science, that is pattern making. Today we call it AI and put a big sort of nice stamp, but data sciences have always been there in some way, form or other, and Amazon made it even better. And why are we stuck in this world? Why are we sort of doing like the same old thing and just sort of giving people 10% discount and 20% discount coupons? So he thought about it, so I thought either he'll throw me out, or thankfully he couldn't throw me out then because I was working with a VC. So either he will ask me not to come from next day, or he will say, fine, I mean, we'll kind of do something. And he said, that makes sense. Tell me, what can you do? So we went back to doing what 101 years ago people in Bauhaus did, which was to map flows. How do you map flows? Which is how do people come in, go out, do all those kinds of things? And there's a lot of kind of complex maps that we started looking at. And we saw patterns emerging out of it that you could do so much more overall with because something emerged which was very interesting. I'll come back to that in a moment. So we did what we wanted to do, depersonalization. Of course, there were technical challenges and all sorts of things, which is because you are kind of catering to about 10 million people logging in every day and going through things, and you cannot break the system because suddenly they will, then people will get mad because they're not able to buy a ticket or book a holiday home or whatever thing, right? So we put this together, and that's what it earlier used to look like, and that's what the first version of it looked like. That's what the third version of that looks like. I think what you see today is about the fifth version of it, but it's not fundamentally changed quite a lot. Of course, what is changed is, what has happened here is deeper suggestions. If you have bought a flight but not bought a hotel, for example, and you're going from Bangalore to Bombay, it might offer you hotel suggestions. And this is very logical if you think about it. There is always unsold inventory which can be given at a discount. But if you say there's a discount versus if you say, I understand you, you're going to somewhere and you might not have booked, it's a different thing as opposed to saying a blanket discount. This is how an old hotel page, booking page used to look like versus what I think it looks like today. It's probably got different, slightly different now. What that old page used to look like, of course, there's a plethora of information, but what you also realize is that we don't want to withhold information. We rather have you see information and act upon it as opposed to like not tell you much overall. So the learning here is, which is the same and which is probably a harder one, I guess, for folks doing offices and large complexes, is that we typically tend to design for a mass, a million. And I think in Flipkart, you have the big billion days, and you talk about billions, right? I think, can you design for one? Can you build around one, build for one? That's the thinking. Because eventually, I mean, that one unifies into cohorts of different sorts. I mean, people who might have disability, not necessarily permanent disability, but temporary disability. People sort of break hands, people who have permanent disability, people who are looking for something different, people who might not like light. We assume that everyone likes bright and light and all of that, but people with eye issues might not like it. So there can be many people, many individuals who can come together in cohorts. There is also mind spaces which are different. So the same person who's going on a business trip has a very transactional approach to travel versus the same person going with family has a very different approach to travel. So this is where the person is kind of looking at, let's say. So, but I think the overall, whether it's my trip, my way, is usually a source of joy that you're letting me do certain things. Again, doing things, getting things done versus dreaming. Desktop first or mobile first, I think people first is the right answer to it, really, kind of. So whichever way, wherever they are. If you remember, many of you might remember, at one point, Flipkart wanted to close down its website. They got Myntra to close it down. I remember having a very long argument with Sachin Bansal on and the example I had was a train in Japan which runs only for one passenger. It runs day in, day out, and I think the argument was, hey, it's Flipkart, there's so much money. You can afford to run this. I mean, it's not that money is an issue. What is it, kind of? Because we have to be where users are. It's not either of them, it's user first. So the question really is, I have zero answer to this, and I don't know, but I'm just provoking, is what does deep personalization mean for spaces at scale, kind of, really? And very interestingly, of course, a lot of green is coming in, a lot of the outside is in, a lot of color is also in. But what is happening on the other two images? By the way, all of these are kind of partly or fully AI generated. A lot of offices don't want you to have personal spaces. They want you to leave the desk completely clean. It's clinical and clean, and suddenly that whole personalization disappears. That sense of ownership and belonging which you talked about, that disappears. The other thing is of course, not all home offices are like that, but everyone in the home office space aspires to be that. That's in space of their own, deeply personalized. There is the thing about people not wanting to come to work, especially when it's Bangalore and you're spending 3 hours to commute one way or whatever. So I think all of these are also problems. And how do you make an office space a place to come together and to belong? So the question really is, very often I've heard people talk in terms of efficiency scale, repeatability, cost, or we can do this. The question, and I have zero answer on this one, is how do we replace the or with the and, really, kind of? Can we have this and can we have that? Good so far? Timing-wise? Okay. So the last and not the least is sometimes you create a space or create a place which exists only in time. Once it's done, it breaks apart and becomes completely afresh. And I've been doing this conference now for many years, and I'll just call Design Up. And when in 2016, we kind of started pretty much like WiREnet, over a conversation in Kormangla saying, essentially me complaining, saying that I hate this conferences, design conferences are bad, and why don't people do, and all of that. And then it struck me, like a guru of mine used to say that, if you're complaining all of that, what are you going to do about him? He was from Chennai, but he was in Ahmedabad, and he had picked up some Hindi to say, "Tu kya karega?" And that struck me, what is going to be my response? My response cannot be complaints and more complaints. My response has to be something that I would love to enjoy and sit and go to. So that is how Design Up was born in 2016. We had a tiny space, and this space was, this is actually Naresh Venkatramanan's space in, what's that place? Church Street, yeah. So this was the ground floor, on the other side is social. This is a very narrow thing where 230 people were supposed to go, and this is a mezzanine space on the 6th floor, and the lift could only take about 6 people at a time. And this was a maths problem, not just a design problem. So like, how would people go up? So I think we put our design thinking hats on and said, guys, please come in very, very early. There are great breakfast places. Koshi's was around the corner, so we talked about Koshi's and other breakfast places. We kind of dangled the carrot of easy parking nearby. So we had a long campaign of emails going on for over 10 days. 10 days to go, 9 days to go, here's one reminder. And if you are still late, we will have a refreshment set up at the 3rd floor where you can get bananas and biscuits and yoga bars and tea and coffee. So just walk up, get your exercise, have your stuff, and go up. And we managed to avoid the lift problem, the maths problem, kind of. We managed to avoid. People were okay, because it was a very narrow space when I think back of it. Now, of course, this is the space. It was what it was. Our very first speaker was a woman. Our last speaker also was a woman in that thing. What we have done is, we have always said 2 or 3 principles which are very kind of sacrosanct, is that we will be always accessible, or accessibility, disability friendly, whichever way you put it. We will always have at least 4 to 5 speakers out of 10 have to be women, and we will have no disposable plastics. And so no disposable plastic water bottles. If you find anything, we'll have to find kind of the space owners kind of thing. So Design Up grew, 2016, 17, 18, 19, we just kept doubling. It was like the hockey stick growth of, so we had, in 2019, we had 1,600 people attend. We took entirely Lalit Ashok over. We had people coming from Japan doing 40 feet interactive screens where you could interact with them. And so it was a celebration of technology and human ingenuity. And we said, okay, 2020 is going to be bigger and grander. And what happened was, boom, it was 0. So COVID hit, and it was something which was unimaginable for all of us. And 2021 was even worse, and I think many of you remember that. So in 2021, we did something very different. We did a conference online, and every ticket, 100% went to one of the 4 charities, which is, if you remember, there was oxygen sort of supplies was one. We actually funded a wing for a tribal hospital, because the fear was it might go to the tribal areas as well. So, and we raised about 70 lakhs for charities. And everyone around the world, we had speakers from all over different time zones coming in, even including Oscar winners and all sorts of awardees and everyone else. So 2024, we came together again, and this is the empty space, 1,000 chairs laid out before you. We said, okay. So we put some more ground rules. We said we don't want to have the biggest conference ever, and I'll come back to that. This is what it looks like on a Saturday afternoon, 1,000 people sitting and listening. Okay, not 1,000, maybe 950 or something. There are some empty chairs. It's a sense of, I think many of you have spoken about that, the sense of belonging. I belong to this place. This is my place. And part of that belonging is, of course, to say, what will we not have? Because the moment you make it a 2,000, 3,000 people conference, you will open the doors, and you will have a lot more people who will not give you that sense of belonging. You might have people coming up to you and trying to sell you some .com sort of thing or some random things, and this is not what you want. We have been super selective about our sponsors. We actually rejected 2 sponsors this year, saying this is not in the spirit of what we want. So we said this is what we cap it at, 1,000, and that's it. No more anymore, kind of. I'll just play a snippet. Because I think running out of time. But if you look at that, this ramp is almost a 65-foot ramp, and it's built for one person. And this is what I was talking about earlier, building around one, building for one, even if we had to. We have no idea what it costs, and we don't even want to look at what it costs. If it needs to be done, it needs to be done. There is one human who needs it needs it, kind of thing. So this is that sense of tribal belonging, which is what you guys are also doing here, which is we all belong to this larger tribe, and that's what makes people happy, coming together. We have people coming from hundreds of different companies, designers, including a lot of non-designers actually who come in, and from all over the world. So we have had people from even Myanmar and Mexico coming in. The interesting part is that what we did this year, which resonated so strongly with a lot of people, is we had a wall of names, where we put up the names of every company and every person who came here. And you can see someone out there that, when you see that you are also someone, and you're not just lost in a crowd of million people, that's what makes you kind of smile and kind of feel happy. And I think this probably is the largest set of photographs that we have ever had, kind of with everyone saying, this is my name, this is me, I was there. There's Abhishu Roy kind of framing his name. There is Tanvi there framing her name. And I think people loved that so much that we eventually had to put a wall of love, which collates all. We had when we look back, we probably had a cumulative 1 million different sort of impressions in different things. So we put this together as a wall of love and put that there. But so I think success is not really, and this is the word that I've been hearing also, it's about belonging. It's about longing to belong to something, longing to come back. People sending their cat photographs and all sorts of photographs saying, hey, damn, we're missing it. When are you coming back again? So it's not about the numbers. It's about that sense of belonging. So if I think about it, if I sum it up, there are these 4 stories and 4 learnings. Hopefully there's something there. The kitchens to UX, the airport, make my trip, and design up. There are probably going to be a word with each of them: context, ownership, personalization, and belonging. I think the last 3 are all dependent upon the first one. If you understand the context of use, if you understand the context of your users, if you understand that, that space, that Sheraton was a beautiful space, but people are going to just come in together for 3 days, and they're going to change the energy of that space. They're going to bring, who are these people? What energy are they going to bring? What is the passion? What is the purpose? And 3 days, that event will happen. The place will be transformed and again go back to a default state overall. So if I look back at those words, I'll just put it there. That's probably a whole bunch of thoughts and ideas around what could spark joy. Not forever, but in little bits and pieces, to just remember and long for it again and again. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, for that session. A wonderful session. I invite Fancy, George, and Smiti Sud to share a small token of appreciation to Jay. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everybody. So it's been a true pleasure hosting you all tonight. We have now come to the end of the event, but the party has just got started. Kindly enjoy your time over dinner and drinks on the terrace, and some live music played by an artist called Twinkle Ann. And please don't forget your orange pants. Thank you for being an amazing audience. Be joyful and be alive. And before I sign off, I don't know if I'm going to be here next year. I promise I tried to be here again. But, I now invite Leila to give the vote of thanks. And thank you, everybody.
Oh, Oh, wow. Months and months of planning, and I can't believe we've actually reached the moment where I'm delivering the vote of thanks. This is such an overwhelming moment for me, and I know many of you are eager to get started with the evening, but I promise to make this very short. Ladies and gentlemen, our wonderful audience, I'd first like to start off by thanking Abha for being a wonderful host today. Abha, your warmth, energy, and charm has made this event even more memorable. Thank you for that. A big thank you to everyone, present or not, members and non-members, men and women, friends, colleagues, and family, both here and at home. You are the heartbeat of this event, and I hope you can hear my heartbeat as I say this. Your energy and enthusiasm make gatherings like this so meaningful and memorable. Thank you for that. To our dedicated members, you have been with us from day one. We know we can always count on your steadfast support as we move forward. And frankly, we wouldn't want to do this without you. So thank you for being there. Now, a few special shout-outs. So if you're in the audience, please stand as I call your name. And I hope there are a few here. Thank you to our WiREx volunteers, the amazing team behind our flagship university program. Abha Pavangopal, Shaifali Singh, Suma Kandige, Beena Kokku, Aparna Ramanathan, Anagha Ghorparkar, and Pooja Kadel. Our fantastic WiREnet guest speakers this year at WiREx, Madhusmita Sahu, Sangeeta Menon, Divya Varadan, Surita Deshpande, Gayatri Gopal, and Manjula Tavarakere. You are the reason we had so many engaging sessions, and we can't thank you enough. Thank you. Next, some more names also deserve a special mention, and that is Sarah Naqvi Ahmed and Girija Rangaswamy. You've been instrumental in leading and supporting our member engagement events like campus tours and heritage walks. Thank you for making these experiences so memorable to us. Our WiREnet Project for Change, led by Aarti Parigi. It is one of the most exciting initiatives for making a meaningful difference in reimagining labor settlements. Thank you for tirelessly pushing this vision forward, and I know you've sacrificed many Saturdays for this. Thank you. A massive thanks to Vaishali Bhatia for conceptualizing and producing the beautiful WiREnet video. It perfectly captures our spirit of growth and our drive to build a thriving, vibrant, and inclusive community. Thank you. I also want to thank our esteemed guest speakers today, Jay Datta, Chandra Jain, Dr. Christine Bruckner, and our brilliant panelists, which comprise of Shanti Sundar, Ritesh Sachdev, Dr. Deepta Satish, and architect Gayatri Shetty. Led by Venkat Neelakantan, you've all enlightened us today, and let's face it, we're all leaving this hall a little smarter because of you. Thank you. Let's not forget our incredible sponsors, our annual prime sponsor, Human Scale, together with our annual event sponsors, that is Detail, Adrian's, How We Work, and Merino. Without your generous support, nothing of this would have been possible, so thank you. Varsha Timmappa, our WiREnet community manager, you truly are the glue that holds this community together. Your insights and contributions are so deeply appreciated in this chaotic world called WiREnet world. Thank you. Last but not the least, I promise I'm coming to my last paragraph. A huge thank you to my amazing team of co-founders and governing council members, even though we do tend to pull our hair apart on most days. You redefine collaboration, respect, and teamwork every single day. We've come so far, but we're just getting started. And together we're building something bigger, stronger, and more inclusive over and over again. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. With that said, let's go and enjoy the rest of the evening. And I drop the mic. Thank you all.